हेलो दोस्तों, वेलकम टू बिटकॉइन हब। मैं हूं भाविक। इस बार के जो हमारे पॉडकास्ट हैं उनके जो गेस्ट हैं, आई थिंक ही डजंट नीड एनी इंट्रोडक्शन। उन्होंने 4 साल पहले इंडिया में बिटकॉइन डेवलपमेंट कम्युनिटी स्टार्ट करी थी एंड आज वो कम्युनिटी इंडिया का सबसे बड़ा डेवलपमेंट कम्युनिटी बन चुकी है। हाँ, मैं बात कर रहा हूँ बिटशाला की एंड द पर्सन बिहाइंड बिटशाला, मिस्टर राजर्षि मैत्र की। सो आज की पॉडकास्ट में हमने डिस्कस किया है कि कैसे उन्होंने बिटकॉइन को फाइंड किया एंड कैसे ही पूरे क्रिप्टो करेंसी जो भी बूम था उसमें पूरे नॉइज़ भरे एनवायरनमेंट में कैसे उन्होंने बिटकॉइन जो प्योर सिग्नल है वो फाइंड किया, उन कैसे तुरंत ही उन्होंने बिटकॉइन पे कंट्रीब्यूट करने के लिए उन्होंने अपनी जर्नी स्टार्ट कर दी एंड आज वो कई लोगों को बिटकॉइन डेवलपमेंट सिखा रहा है। एंड हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया कि भारत में मेन स्ट्रीम एजुकेशन में, मेन स्ट्रीम इंस्टीट्यूशन में कैसे बिटकॉइन एजुकेशन की ज़रूरत है एंड कैसे कोई कॉलेज ग्रेजुएट या फिर जो भी अपने कॉलेज कर रहा हो कैसे बिटकॉइन डेवलपमेंट स्पेस में अपनी जर्नी स्टार्ट कर सकता है, क्योंकि उनकी जर्नी भी काफ़ी फैसिनेटिंग रही है एंड ही इज़ ऑल्सो कंट्रीब्यूटेड टू द बिटकॉइन डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट। सो इट हैज़ बिन अ वेरी इंस्पायरिंग जर्नी एंड उनको सुनना, like it was one of the best podcast ever recorded on the Bitcoin hub. So मैं ज़्यादा नहीं कहूँगा, जस्ट बिना कुछ देरी के पॉडकास्ट स्टार्ट करता है। थैंक यू गाइस।
Welcome, Raj. How are you? What's been
Hey,
happening?
thanks for having me. Been good, doing good, and yeah, been working around a bunch of Bitcoin stuffs and all.
Nice.
Yeah, so far it's pretty crazy, exciting time since like last 1 year, and now that we got a initial round of a small conference in March, and a lot of people got very active. So I pretty sure we're gonna talk about all of those, and yep, happy to jump in.
Lovely. It's a pleasure to have you. We have a developer after a long time and probably the first time on our show. And we wanted to have an inside perspective on how things are on ground apart from your regular price action. क्योंकि उसके बारे में तो, people see that on the news, there's mainstream coverage for it, there's all the hype around it. But who's actually building Bitcoin from India and for Bitcoin? That we are not very averse and not very keen, and not many people know about who the people who actually
Hmm,
toil away behind the scenes
right,
are. So
right.
starting with your personal background, आपकी journey कैसे थी? How did you start off? And what's your work experience been like? Would you like to share that?
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it short though. Um, I started in Bitcoin back in 2017 when I was like working as a professional in a civil engineering company in Mumbai. I worked as a structural engineer there, and I kind of like stumbled upon Bitcoin by accident. I wasn't looking for it. It suddenly popped up in my Facebook feed, and it was like the end of the 2017. So that if you remember, there was a bull market back then. 2018 January was the peak. So I kind of came in on 2017 October. All the media and the a bunch of newspaper were talking about Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto, and Web3 back then. Some bunch of my colleagues at office started talking about it. So I initially took a very like surface level financial interest into it, like yeah, nerd money, but maybe there is some gains to make and I'll put some money into it. But eventually as I started exploring around the things, like the first thing that got me curious is like instead of like in traditional finance, in that portal where I was like doing that investment, they used to take like Bitcoin, Litecoin and Ethereum, and every time I'm refreshing the screen, the number, the address, or what I used to think as the account number is changing. And that got me thinking, like, how is that working? Like my bank account number doesn't change. How does they know every time which account I actually sent the money to? That was the first question I started asking and like searching around, how does this thing work? And eventually I stumbled into Andreas Antonopoulos, and I got hooked. I kind of like got through all of his videos in within 1 month, and I was like binge watching instead of Netflix. I was like doing Antonos video, and then like I started it opened up a lot of different parallel um rabbit holes that I wasn't even expecting to fall down on. And then I was like, suddenly, oh my god, like there's so much so much more of that is happening. Initially I was thinking like this is just an investment, but this is a new form of money that is also having a lot of interesting weird socio technical situations around it. If you remember back then, it was the peak of the block size war. So I got in into November, I got in into September. Block size war, that like the final fork happened in November 16th. I saw it happening live, and Bitcoin cash price both shoot up to $3,000, and then there was a sudden crash in that. I was like, whoa, what is happening? I understand a bit of it, but I don't understand fully. And but it initially like kicked off my curiosity, and just I kept on going after that. Then over time, like I kind of like got addicted with the idea that all the time I was thinking about Bitcoin, various things surrounding Bitcoin, what can happen, what can people build. And the more I want, because I wanted to understand it much deeper, I started learning to code. I don't have a coding background. I did a bit of coding here and there throughout my college, in school, sometimes in the projects and all, but I wasn't a dev. And so I started learning to code around 2019, start of 2019. Then by the end of 2020, I was good enough that I could get some side gigs into working on some Bitcoin projects and stuffs. And then on 2021, I got an offer from Spiral to work on Bitcoin open source projects full time. And with that, I finally made the shift from my traditional civil engineering career into Bitcoin full time. And it's been 4 years, 5 years since then. And yep, never looked back.
Wow, that's a quite an inspiring journey, especially the part where you said that you're a self-taught coder, and not many people are aware of that. Where it's the interest that drives you, and then you start
Yeah,
learning about the things that you actually want to do,
yeah,
and that's
yeah,
what separates the wheat
yeah.
from the chaff.
There's
Uh,
a lot of people like that though. Like this is pretty common in Bitcoin space. There are a lot of self-taught developers in Bitcoin who doesn't come from traditional background. And another thing that even I also didn't understand, and I don't think many people understand this, is like software is probably the only field where we can you can pull this off. You cannot be a self-taught civil engineer. You cannot be a self-taught doctor, but you can be a self-taught software engineer, and software kind of like opens up that field in that way. It was very surprising for me that I actually got into a position like that without having any background, without having any qualification to show for whatever. And then like over time, like I learned this new way of like building your career, which is also very different from traditional tech. Maybe we'll talk about it much more deeper when it comes to Bitcoin open source and how people work over there, how to get into it. So that whole experience kind of like opened my eyes onto like this other part of the world that I didn't even knew existing. I always thought like in order to be a Bitcoin developer, you have to have a computer science, cryptography, or that kind of background from it. But I met a lot of people who have similar journey as mine. Some people went to college, then they dropped out. Some people did going through the college. Some people didn't even bother going to the college, and they started directly into Bitcoin open source development from high schools. And so this is absolutely possible, and it just requires the time, effort, energy, and the motivation. Like it's not easy, it takes time, it's hard, but if you are motivated enough, it's possible. And that's what we do at Bitshala. Basically our job is to give guidelines and pathways for people who have the motivation. They know why they want to do it, they're asking how I can do that. And if you go through that Bitshala pipeline, that will kickstart your journey into Bitcoin open source development.
Awesome. We'll get to Bitshala in a bit. I have a lot more questions regarding that as well, in terms of what to choose and how to find and stuff. But
Mhm.
going back a bit, 2017 is when you actually started. There was a
Yeah.
lot of commotion with the whole fork issue. There was
Mhm.
also ICO ka boom as well.
Yeah.
Now, with that, you had a lot of other altcoins in the space. How
Exactly.
did you
Yeah.
differentiate between, your interests being Bitcoin only and all the rest? Like, ignore
Yeah.
all the rest and stick to Bitcoin. What was the
Yeah.
differentiating factor?
Um the factor was like the more I studied, the more I tried to understand decentralization, the more I understood the trade-offs of various systems, the more it made clear to me that definitely there is some amount of you can call it scam, you can call it Ponzi, you can call it intellectual dishonesty going on across the board in the industry. And but it took some time. Like for first, I remember for first 3-4 months of study, I actually couldn't differentiate between them. In my head, it's like there's Bitcoin, and maybe yeah, there's better Bitcoin, and there are other projects which are also interesting. It's only after like scouring through shittiest white papers one after another for 2-3 months until I realized, okay, there is like something else is going on. And then it took another say 3 months of studying around like various concepts in order to fully grok that where Bitcoin differentiate. um I also remember, because it was the block size war time, there was a lot of drama going on in Twitter about Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin SV wasn't even there back then, it wasn't even born. And used to take a lot of part in like heated debates in Twitter, right? That's what I used to do at the start. I was like constantly arguing about various things to different people, and those arguments also in my head formed my own conviction. Like why what happens after a fork, and why or how a certain fork can get economic majority. And that whole experience was pretty unique and pretty interesting. In at the same time, I wasn't entirely sure what exactly I'm looking at. I'm kind of like going, as I'm finding more information, I'm trying to understand and learn more thing at that very intense environment where a lot has been going on. So I guess like that whole experience, by the end of 2018, by mid of 2018, I kind of like got my whole conviction after the fork and after doing all those debates and stuffs. I got my conviction is Bitcoin is here for stay. Um, uh, Decentralization inherently does not scale. Doing a global smart contract platform that can play smart contract games on top of a blockchain database is not a good idea. And then moved all my shitcoin money which I made in those boom period into Bitcoin, and from there I just kept stacking sats while just studying up and doing my whole day job.
Nice. No, I like the whole conviction and then completely pivoting to Bitcoin
Yeah,
only.
yeah,
Not many people are able to do that.
yeah.
They fall trapped to the idea. Okay, what if this performs better? I
Mm,
mean, there's a long time. When I entered the space, there was this starting time where I was like this for. I mean, I was thinking in the same direction for a few months, but then I switched completely. Like
mm,
done. There's nothing else. There is no second best,
mm.
ideally, and that's
Mhm.
how I completely pivoted to Bitcoin. Bhavik, आपका
Actually,
कुछ
yeah, actually, I also like found Bitcoin in just 2 months before Raj, June, July 2017. But from that moment until 2020, I was just trading altcoins and shitcoins, and I lost most of my money. And
Mm,
after 2020, COVID hit, then I started building conviction. So yeah, it
mm.
took me 4 or 5 years.
Right. I
Yeah,
know a guy who took like 8 years,
yeah, yeah.
and he wasn't even shitcoining. He was like just not interested. Like, meh, it's gonna go away kind of mode. And then 8 years later, he got all in, and right now one of the biggest Bitcoin maxis. And so
Nice,
it does
nice.
take time, as they say. Like, you get it at the time when you deserve,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
it just like
yeah,
takes
yeah.
everybody individual to complete their own journey and reach to a certain point where they have the light bulb moment and like, oh my god, like this things is here for stay. So yeah, I'm pretty happy that like it came to me pretty quickly. But the another reason I was like interested into this, it was because of the technical nature of this, like how mathy the whole thing is, like how much math is involved behind the whole stuffs. And at the very initial days, like in first 15-20 days of finding Bitcoin, my initial approach was like, this is a scam and I'm gonna find out and I'm gonna break it. And I was actually like, for the first 3 months I was seriously studying to find the flaws on the system, because I was very convinced like this is gonna break, this is some internet shad is going on. Only like going through that experience very rigorously and looking into the maths, when you turn around and say like, oh no, I was wrong, like this thing is actually working and this is why it's working. So once you see that, you cannot unsee it. And that's what created the conviction for me. The majority of the people who comes across Bitcoin, because they're looking at it from the abstractions layer, how you're seeing it in the exchanges, how you're interacting with it, you're not going deeper inside the protocol and trying to actually figure out how the system works. So that's why like the conviction level kind of go only that deep. The deeper you go, the deeper your conviction goes. And so I went pretty deep pretty fast, so that's how I got the conviction pretty fast. Most people say like, hey, something can be better. At the same time, like, because this is a financial asset, you always have to understand that ROI is a time dependent phenomena. That means whether something is better or not, it depends on what is the time frame you are talking about. Are you talking in next 3 seconds something is better than Bitcoin? Maybe yes, there are hundreds of things better in next 3 seconds to be in better than Bitcoin. Are you talking in next 20 years something better than Bitcoin? Then no, there is no second best. So most of the time people basically get lost in translation of the time window what they're talking about when they call in terms of like returns of investment. You can still make 100x in some kind of like DeFi meme coin if you time it right, and that will make you more money than Bitcoin. Now the question is, do you want to have a meaningful life or want to make money trading meme coins? That's where like ultimately it falls down to. There is a lot of people who says like, I'm a crypto trader but I put my all my money in Bitcoin, and because they understand why Bitcoin is here to stay, or like they kind of like go with the current gospel of like, it is staying, so it's lindy, so it's gonna stay. And they are all putting their like returns and whatever profits they're making back into Bitcoin while trading all sorts of meme coins and stuff. So basically the industry is working like a whole big casino. It has always been since 2013, since 2012, since the first time people figured out how to create altcoins. It has always been kind of like the casino kind of nature. Now you are seeing like they are not even pretending anymore. Previously they were at least trying to come up with some buzzword that would at least make some um, not so technically literate investors happy, right? But nowadays they're just straight up calling it as a meme, straight up calling it as like just for the fun of it, and you can still make profit out of it and you can still do it, but that doesn't mean like there is anything fundamental going on over there.
Right. Um, Coming to the part where you said that you are a self-taught coder, and having said that, what's your take on the actual education in terms of Bitcoin education, in terms of programming, coding, designing? Uh, how do you see that environment shape in India over the years, and where is it currently? Like, what's the ambience like in the whole space, especially in India?
Yeah, well, the shape was non-existent when I started. There were few initiatives back then globally that were doing some training modules on Bitcoin development and stuffs, but there were very few people. And the shape kind of like shifted over the years since the start of 2021. I think that's when like Summer of Bitcoin started. Summer of Bitcoin was the his done by one Indian guy, Adi. And it was the first global Bitcoin education program ever undertaken at that scale. And hats off to Adi, he kind of like created a really global international brand with that, and they churn a lot of people. But apart from that, the education space has really been non-existent in India. There were few efforts outside who were trying to do structured education, but they weren't going very far. um So that was the main motivation for me to create Bitshala, because it doesn't exist, and I was waiting for somebody to create something like that, but eventually nobody did. So I stepped in and said, like, I'll do it and let's see how it can be done. So currently we have something, we have Bitshala, and we also have other organizations in last 1.5 year. Plan B Network, Me Premier Bitcoin, Kubo Plus Plus, and here in Goa we have Plebs Together Strong. There is Zonghoti. There is another other form of like community building initiatives like Bitcoin for India, Desi Bitcoin Show. All of these things popped up. So right now the shape of the environment is pretty vibrant. In fact, like if you are someone with basic programming understanding, that you know how to write if clauses, for loops, and basic syntax on a language, and you want to start getting involved into Bitcoin open source development, you have a path open up for you. You have a website where you can go, and you have a course that you can join, and from there you can have a syllabus that you can go step by step, one after another. So when I was like going through it, it felt to me like Bitcoin should be like a whole it actually requires a 2 years of like multidisciplinary masters kind of course in order to fully grok all the components, but at least it should need a 6 months of semester course in order to for somebody to get started. And so basically we at Bitshala, we combined all the current materials and resources that we have and structured various kind of like study programs on top of it, which look takes various shapes and various forms, and people can join those study programs. And there are levels, there is beginner level, intermediate level, and advanced level. But if you go through all of that, you will know everything you need to know in order to jump in into any project and start contributing over there. So right now the pipeline exists, and right now globally the education ecosystem is also growing a lot. After creating, like, Bitshala was an inspiration from Chain Code Labs, and then after Chain Code Lab there is another organization in Africa that was called Kala, and which is now called the Beatrice Builders. There is one organization in Brazil called Vintium. There is one in Argentina called Library Satoshi. I think they rebranded into B4OS, something like that. There is an Indonesian education community who are trying to do the same thing. So kind of like right now all the educators across the globe are constantly collaborating among each other. We are sharing our notes, what's working in our community, what's working in their community, how we can get like infrastructural benefit from each other. So it started to become a very vibrant ecosystem. And at the same time, like, this is something interesting that happened after 2018 in Bitcoin, is like a lot of funding agencies came in the industry who are supporting these open source developers, and there is a growing demand of open source developers in Bitcoin ecosystem. So there's a lot of project that needs developer, there are a lot of project that doesn't even exist right now, so somebody should come and build those projects. And there is also a lot of organizations who are coming up with various form of support programs to sustain these developers. So actually Bitcoin open source development is becoming like a legit career in India. And right now, I think I crunched some numbers, and we have around 12 people who are working via various grant programs in various Bitcoin open source projects full time in India. And that's quite a lot. This number was like two when I started, including me. There was only one other guy, and now we have 12 more people, and this number is constantly growing each year.
Lovely.
Yeah,
That's
great.
magnificent. भाविक बताइए. I have a few questions which I want to probe into, but आपका कुछ
Yeah, yeah,
question था?
please continue the question. Continue the questions.
Cool.
Mm.
So this interview, yeah, this video is dedicated to the people, the academicians, and the students alike. And I would want to know your understanding and your take on why should teachers in our respective colleges, your engineering, design, operations, management courses, why should they care about Bitcoin? Why should the students care about Bitcoin? Like if they are engineers graduating from any of the colleges, premier colleges ho ya tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, say, why should they care about Bitcoin, and why contribute to open source tech at all? And if you're starting out and fine. Bachala is a great first step to approach this because there is no other formal way where you can actually learn. In Bachala, you can, as you rightly said, you can find like-minded people working on the same projects and the same environment. So exchange of ideas करने में बहुत easy हो जाता है.
Hmm.
But for a newbie who are stuck in their rut, like 4 years
Hmm.
engineering ka, I don't know what to
Yeah.
do. I'm stuck. I have internships to deal with. I have course
Yeah.
semesters, 8 semesters which I have to finish.
Hmm.
कैसे करना है? Like how does one approach, and why should academicians and students care about this?
Uh, I cannot tell why academicians should care about it, because I don't fully I do understand why academicians care about certain things. That's like when academia gets their funding. So I'm a person like who is not very hopeful on the academia to turn around and feedback on Bitcoin. It has traditionally have not been very helpful to Bitcoin. I don't think they will be very helpful to Bitcoin. For simple reason, there is no incentive, and the academia incentive is derived from the fundings that they get from the government. So if there is no interest from the government, the academia will not change. But you can see in other countries where the interest from the government actually changes, the academia do follows that pattern. So academia basically follows instruction. Teachers over there in IITs, IIMs, and other business schools and whatever engineering colleges, they're going to teach whatever the syllabus permits them to teach. If the syllabus doesn't permit them for Bitcoin, they will not teach it unless they're personally motivated for some reason. In that case, they will do it outside of academia because that's much easier. So that's the reason why academia has always been left around, especially in India, where the academicians are actually very cowardice kind of things. We do not take like a lot of like risk in terms of research and development. If you actually take a look at the research stuff so that is going on in technical fields in India, most of the cutting edge stuffs are coming from the West. Because why? Because MIT, Harvard, it's not that they are just smarter than us, it's just like they can work on stuffs as they please. Here we have to always like get like the professors and the teachers are restricted. But anyway, that's not a problem that I can handle, and I'm not interested even handling that. Academia will do whatever academia wants. Coming back to the question, what would a student do? um there can be various reasons to get into Bitcoin or any other kind of open source. If you are somebody in computer science in second year, third year right now, chances are you have already heard about open source. You have seen open source as a project that you have like maybe tried to run, maybe like tried to play around, maybe some toolings that you have used to do something else in your own BTech projects or something like that. But there is a huge difference between the work culture between corporate and open source. Open source gives you much more freedom, gives you the chance to explore out your own ways of doing stuffs, at the same time connect with lot of like really smart and great people. In corporate, you are under a management, you are under a manager, your manager might be good, your manager might be bad, you are under a strict deadline, and that's all you got. And learning in open source is a very like steep climb, at the same time very rewarding climb. That's why like you see in a lot of colleges, second year, third year students, they go into Google Summer of Code or like Summer of Bitcoin kind of internships, because if you work in open source and if you have that contribution in your GitHub, that adds thousands of words in your resume than like saying like, hey, I have done some like private work with some this startup over here and there with just this certificate from the startup. So the open source proof of work is much more easy to verify. And coming back to that point, like how did I got hired in open source without a degree? Because the proof of work is directly visible in your GitHub. Your GitHub becomes your resume. You don't need to write another resume to prove to the world what you are capable of or what your worth is. So that is something that the whole tech industry in a general is going forward. Like if you are somebody who is following what has been happening in the tech scene economically throughout last 1 or 2 years, there are a lot of chatters happening from the startup ecosystem that they are going beyond the beyond the degrees, beyond the credentials. They are like directly going for the skill set best hire. So this is something Replit CEO and many other CEOs I have seen talking about in the Twitter and stuff, that they don't care about degrees anymore. Show us you can do it and you got the job. So this is a more direct approach of filtering people. So even if you are not like eyeing for a job right now, getting open source contribution in your GitHub profile is going to boost up your portfolio a lot. And that's first reason why you should like do it first, to build up yourself. Then the second point is, this is where like the selling gets a bit harder, and I think that's part and parcel of the game. Open source is not for everyone. When you're working in a company, when there is a structure, when there is a management, when there is a HR, you get told what you need to do and what you need to submit every Friday. You might hate it, but that's a structure. And believe me or not, it's much easier to work and be productive in an environment with that structure without it. At first, we always think like we want the freedom, but once you actually get the freedom, you realize that's much harder. When nobody's telling you what to do, nobody is like checking on you, you can take as much vacation as you want, you cannot even choose not to do anything. It's very hard to keep your production and your productivity upfront, at the same time knowing what you should be working on. And this does come with a bit of experience. So usually we see in open source development people who shine, who usually have 2-3 years of corporate experience, so they know their tech stack very fluent. And they also have to worked with other team, they know how team communication and management works. So they like work better in open source than college students. College students we see, like especially in summer of Bitcoin, this is like my experience as a mentor in summer of Bitcoin for last 4 years has been, is like college kids, like they really are looking for instructions. They're looking for really like, tell me the to do's and I will do it, and then grade me. And this is something that comes from probably the Indian education system mostly, like the way we are programmed for like writing exams, where you have like, tell me something to read, I will read that, give me the question, I will prepare them, and I'll write one of them and get my marks. Real life doesn't work like that. And the kind of like when we see a college student hit open source via summer of Bitcoin, many people get that cognitive dissonance. Whoa, like nobody's telling me what to do, what should I do, I don't know what to do, right? And when like that's an internship. Imagine doing working as a full-time professional developer in that environment, where you have to like design, define, and execute your own work, so that you have to have enough understanding across the ecosystem that what are the kind of work that is needed. So this requires experience and this requires time. So going back to the reason why a college kid should do open source in Bitcoin, if you are that kind of guy who are like very passionate, one, about Bitcoin, otherwise there is always other things to do. Why do this? You can do hundreds of other things. One, you have to be passionate about Bitcoin if you understand the whys of Bitcoin, why it matters, why it's going to change everything, and why it's going to be the most sorted after scale 5 years down the line, when all the governments come over, roll over, and have like more friendly Bitcoin policies, as we are seeing happening. So it's going to be a very important skill. It's a very niche interdisciplinary skill. So just because you have done your computer science doesn't mean you know how to become a Bitcoin engineer. There are other skills you need. So it's high valued and highly demanded. It's interdisciplinary, and it has network effect. That means like if you are building your reputation on this field for 2 years, 3 years, it's only get easier over time. After 3 years, you don't even have to have your own degree, you don't even have to have your job. You can work from anywhere, you can work at any time, you can be with any people, you can work on any project. So the freedom you get is like huge, only if you know how to handle that freedom. So like for a college student, the best way to get into this is like start exploring around the open source ecosystem and gathering this experience and context over time slowly. Maybe get a job in the meantime. Bitcoin is not going anywhere. Like do your job, get your skills done, make some money, make some brand value for yourself. This is another problem. A lot of Indian kids are like want to get the big four brands, right? So because that has a social status. When you say like you work on Bitcoin, your friends and family don't understand it. Your uncles and relatives will not be very satisfied with this idea of like working on some open source Bitcoin projects, rather than I work as like this in Microsoft or Google or Amazon. right? So this is also not for everybody. So this is like something that I also realize as a fact in the journey along the hard way, while scouting for Bitcoin, while training for Bitcoin, is like certain people are made for this, certain people are not. If you are somebody, come find us. If you are not, do your thing, find Bitcoin at your own time. When you do, come find us.
Wow,
Nice.
that's a good call to action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thinking from a parent or a guardian of those children in the college, like I remember when I did my engineering, one of the
Yeah.
main criteria in and around me was the placement. कि किसका placement लगा, कौन से company में लगा,
Yes.
is it a mass recruiter coming at the end of the fourth year?
Yeah.
All of those questions come, and then you
Yeah.
have that carrot dangling के
Hmm.
कितना package दे रही है, what are the benefits, are they doing,
Hmm.
will we be sent abroad for projects and all that, and that
Yeah.
is unfortunately still prevalent in India. So how does, and you've already shown some light on that, but if a person has to not convince, I would say, because it's all personal on what you want to work on. At the same time, what are the like job opportunities, career growth, and monetary considerations one has to
Hmm.
take? Like, do they
Yeah.
have to juggle between a normie job and a Bitcoin job, or they can like dive right in and then expect some remuneration to come in?
Yeah, so like but that depends on first of all, like that depends on what is your expectation. Like if you have depending on different levels of expectation, you can have different levels of security. So what basically, like some student ask me like what is the job security in Bitcoin, what they basically are asking is like where I can like sit for long term without worrying about a certain kind of salary and just keep doing my thing. So but at the same time, some people are also looking for like the very high paying Amazon, Google and other jobs. So if you're looking for something like that, you will not get it over here. um but at the same time, the job ecosystem is constantly thriving and it's growing, right? So like to give some like estimate on like Href, OpenSats and Spiral, these are the major organizations that are funding a bunch of Indian developers to work full time on Bitcoin on various projects, and their salary ranges from 50 to 80K a year in USD term, which is not a bad number. Like so there is money to make, and it will be much better than the shitty tech job that you can get in the current system if you are not getting into big four. And if you know how the ecosystem is apart from big four, Bitcoin open source pays you more, way more than that. So that's one incentive to be there. At the same time, like being in Bitcoin open source, you kind of like at the initial days, at least for first 3 years, you have to kind of be on your toes all the time, because you will need to first thing that you need to handle is the imposter syndrome. You feel like the stupidest person in the room all the time because everybody else sounds way more smarter than you. But that's a learning opportunity. You go through that, that's the grind. Eventually you also get all the context and information and the knowledge in order to take the smart calls and the smart decisions. So the first 1 or 2 year, you kind of have to be on your toes, kind of like have to like be very aware about what is going on around all other ecosystems around the open source project, so you can like connect different project with another project, have collaboration, or move from project to project. So all of these things does take some time. And how their parents will understand it, it actually depends, very subjective on the parents. Some parents do, some parents won't. But if you understand it, I always say like don't rush into Bitcoin. Like it took me 3 years from like starting to learn to code to actually land into a job. 3 years, that's almost like a BTech, right? So it does take time, and give it the time. That's the best thing you can do. Take it slow and take it gradually. Do it while maybe get a normie job. If you have to satisfy your parent, if you have to get a job, get a normie job, and have your free time to study upon Bitcoin. Do that process for 6 8 months, 1 year. Eventually when you find your opportunity, you make the switch. So you never push for the switch, because in open source you don't get the money by getting through a gate. There is no gate in open source. It's a gateless thing. So the only way to get selected is by providing proof of work. And just like Bitcoin, proof of work is not instant. Proof of work takes time. And there is a nice parallel correlation here, like the miners has to wait for 101 blocks in order to get their reward, right? So
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
same thing. You have to put in the time and you have to put in the work. That's what will get you through the gate, through that like metaphorical gate. That's why you get you the position. Not doing a degree, coming from IIT, having a lot of coding challenges solved will not get you there. So well, like get your job, do your thing. Bitcoin is always going to be there. At the parallel, start building slowly on top of Bitcoin your skills, your expertise, your contribution, your proof of work. If you keep doing it, I have never seen a single person who said like, hey, I have done this thing for 1 year and I didn't got a position in Bitcoin. Never happened, because the whole industry is out for developers like this.
परफेक्ट। भाविक, आप कुछ पूछना चाहोगे?
अभी ऐसे कुछ माइंड में तो नहीं आ रहा है, बट या लाइक आई जस्ट वांट टू, या it's a very like enjoyable listening to him, really.
Awesome.
Lot
तो
to learn. Yeah.
now, having said that, आपने पूरा developer aspect दे दिया, the coding aspect, like to work on Bitcoin on the like the code, the software, the protocol level पे. What is your opinion on the growing trend of Bitcoin corporate adoption? Is that good for Bitcoin? And that opens up a whole new level of understanding Bitcoin and managing it from a finance perspective. पूरी financial engineering हो रही है with companies like Strategy,
Yeah.
MetaPlanet, and
Yeah.
our homegrown company in
Yes.
India, Jetking, who
Yeah.
has proudly accumulated 21 Bitcoin, which is phenomenal, I would say.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Because we saw Chaitanya's story. Chaitanya also is an IIT graduate,
Yeah.
and he moved to US to work at Strategy, and that was
Yeah.
through an internship.
Yeah.
So that's something phenomenal as well. What do you have to say
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, I mean, like this was inevitable. Like it was like just a matter of time until like I don't fully understand why it takes so much time for like MicroStrategy or other financial guy to figure this out. But maybe like the market needs to like reach that kind of number in order for people to like shift the overton window so that they can talk about it. So 100K was a psychological barrier that kind of changed everything, and this is going to happen more and more. So this is another trend that we are seeing, is like the apart from developers in the Bitcoin industry as a whole, like right now we can kind of like call it as an industry, and that's going to require a lot of different kind of skill sets. So it's going to require financial engineers, you're going to require salesperson, marketing person, designers, project managers, product managers, business development guys, and all of these skills are becoming relevant to the industry now. The more and more of the financialization of Bitcoin is happening, and this was supposed to happen. So the developers were kind of like the core workers in this industry when it was nothing more than just code. So that's all you have. You just have softwares and codes and wallets and products and stuffs. But now as you are going into this matured phase and you have more financializations coming in, all sorts of skill sets, people with the understanding of Bitcoin with a specific kind of skill sets becomes very valuable. So we are already seeing it becoming very valuable. We need, for like running Bitshala and other organizations also, we need lawyers who understands Bitcoin. To run a business, you need a marketing guy who understands Bitcoin. To build products, you need a developer who understands Bitcoin. So no matter where you are coming from, if you have your basic understanding of Bitcoin, what it is, what is the essence, how it works, how it evolves, how it moves, and fit any of your skill set, whatever you are good at, you are a good dev, you are a good design, you're a good market, whatever XYZ you are good at, and do that for Bitcoin, and that kind of opens up new form of career opportunities in front of people that a lot of people have figured out, and kind of like feels very blessed, including myself, to be able to do this and call that as my job. And this is happening for more and more people, and this is only gonna grow. So if you haven't paid attention, thinking like, hey, I'm not a dev, I don't have anything to do in Bitcoin, that's not true. There are like so much to build and so much need right now, and it's constantly going to come up as the industry matures both here and in abroad.
Awesome. And in terms of,
Yeah.
हाँ बताइए बताइए बताइए.
When you say it was about to happen, the corporate adoption, so what do you mean by that? Like, are you referencing health in a saying 15 years
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah, basically
Yeah, same thing.
that's what the first
Yeah.
reference that we have of like this thought process. And but like this, like if it kind of like very natural if you think about it. The same way like the financialization on top of gold happened, the same way financialization on top of Bitcoin happens. I think Lean Allen talks about it, Caitlin Long talks about it, many people talked about it over the year. Halfin, that post in 2012, 2013 was, I think, as the
Mhm.
first one, like when he envisioned like Bitcoin Bank coming up. Now whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and that's a whole opens up another can of worm over there, and there's a lot to be said in both like favor and in against of that situation. I think like just like Bitcoin, one thing I learned is like there is always trade-offs. There is no binary in this world, and you are called always kind of like dwelling in a spectrum of trade-off and trying to balance your trade-offs off so that the system is not collapsing away. One of the major of pillar of that system is decentralization. So at every development on Bitcoin, the major thing we need to ask is like, what does it do to the decentralization of Bitcoin? If decentralization parameter goes down, that's bad for Bitcoin. If decentralization parameter goes up, that's good for Bitcoin. At the same time, it also goes into another side, like kind of like a philosophical question of like, what is Bitcoin? If you see like in a situation where like decentralization going down and it becomes like a centralized Bitcoin, and nobody gives a fuck, and everybody just does their own thing, just using Bitcoin as an accounting system for the final settlement layer, and it's very centralized. What are we even doing, Len? Like what is the point of doing all these things? Why don't What's the difference between the current fiat system and the this fiat system? So the like this is one of the trade-off that like we knew from the very beginning. People knew from the very beginning, as the market cap increases, as the price goes up, more and more serious people gonna come in, the Wall Street gonna come in, the hedge funds gonna come in, and now we are seeing this new type of financialization. But all of those financializations are going to put some portion of Bitcoin in the honeypot on those accounts, and you are basically gonna get wrapped Bitcoin on top of it. And there are arguments, some people says like, yeah, that's a valid product, I don't want to hold real Bitcoin, I just want my wrapped paper money, I'll be happy with my life. That's what I wanna do. And if the a whole lot large portion of the market wants to do that, cypherpunks are very small community. So my fear is like, if that trend can somehow hurt decentralization to a certain extent that the Bitcoin protocol can be coerced and changed, then it's basically party over. Like pack up your bags and like go back where you came from, and nothing new here then.
Yeah, but like if we add the incentive parts, so uh, in the rep Bitcoin, in the centralization of Bitcoin, there are no such incentives. Like there can be such incentives for a small time.
Yeah, like centralization of
Yeah.
Bitcoin, the coin, into like wallets doesn't mean you can automatically break consensus rules. So that doesn't mean centralizations of the network.
Right.
What is more important is like the decentralization of the node network, especially the node network. The node network needs to be decentralized, and as long we have a decentralized network, and as long we can battle out forceful consensus
Hmm.
changes via economic or political power, we have the property intact.
Hmm.
If we cannot like defend against economic and political modularization of the consensus mechanisms, like the consensus protocol, that's when we know we are doomed. That's when we know something has broken.
Hmm.
But there is no
Awesome.
way to know that without actually like making that attack on the network. So
Yeah.
that's why like things like block size wars and things like this off return trauma and like the spam attacks and all these kind of things are um, kind of like good in a way, because it stress tests the network, and that's the only way we know that it's still decentralized. If like one day we wake up, we stress test and it changes, like It's not
Mm.
decentralized anymore, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I was getting to that. What's your take on Bitcoin mining centralization risk, and the ant pools and the foundries of the world, and then on the other side you have oceans and demand pool,
Yeah.
and your whole take on the op return and core versus knots saga. What's your
Yeah,
take on that?
I don't have a concrete take on it, because I can have choose to not have like hard opinions on either way or other. It's a good eye opener in front of the community that opens up that old bottle of debate. It feels to me the same debate that I was having in 2017, 2018. It's like it's eventually goes down to data on the blockchain. And in 2018 you have this camp who said like all the data need to be on the blockchain. You have the camp who said like only few data can be on the blockchain. And it was a battle between that. And this is kind of like a fundamental paradox of blockchain. Is like blockchain is basically a data structure. That means data, that means you can craft data in certain way which is not exactly monetary, and you can always do that. So this can of debate is not new for me. Like it kind of, to me, it has been going on forever, and every 4 years it kind of resurfaces back and reminds the newbies like, hey, like it's not a solved problem here. Like this is a perfect conundrum to think about this way or that way. And I don't know, like on terms of like this particular PR, my personal like hunch is like it should not be merged, because like the benefit to drama ratio is not that high, or the drama to benefit ratio on this PR is like so high that it's not worth the drama, and it's better to fall back into the status quo where we were before. But going back into the status quo doesn't solve the spam problem, right? So if you are concerned about the filtering, then that's a problem for you. And uh, the major argument that got me like taking it more seriously, other than just like a operator remit, is like how this impact mining centralization. Even though like the number of the band miner transactions that are like filtered in the mempool policy but needs to be travel to miner via a private network is not high, but you can always have that kind of situation where if that gets high, then that will allow miners to centralize their mempool via those private communication, while those transactions are not there in the regular general mempool. And for other decent like home miners or bitex miners and stuffs like that, and they will naturally lose out in transaction fees, and that will increase mining centralization. So the argument for removing of op return is like, let's not do that. Let's create everything homogeneous. We know data can be encoded anyway, so let's just remove this like kind of like non-consensus limit, and let everybody's mempool be in sync with each other, so nobody can create private mempool with which they can make private profit, with which they can have like centralization across the mining. Because the mining centralization happen via profit. If you have more profit, you have more hashes, that gets you more profit and more hashes. So there is a rolling stone effect happening over there. So that's the reason why they wanted to like remove that thing. But at the same time, like once you remove it, like then it's like an open gate for everybody to put their data into the blockchain, and a lot of people will not like it. But as it goes in Bitcoin, like you have to kind of like battle it out. And if you don't like it, at some point you will need to make a fork. And yeah, the Luke Dasher way, like the filter way, is like filter everything, right? And that is not possible without having a hard fork. And so I see people proposing filter every day, but I don't know how they are gonna do that with a hard fork. And I don't even know how it's possible to do a hard fork at this point. I don't think it is. It will create two
Mm.
different coins. And the mempool way, like the other way, there the reason I think like the PR should not be merged is like there is no use case for it right now. So there is one company, Citria, that they said like they have a use case, but right now we are not seeing a lot of out of bound mempool topic. So reasonable thing is like, let's not poke the dragon and let's go back to where we were in the status quo. And there is also another counter argument, which is the grass-fed side and the Adambeck side coming up, is like, because you have extra cost of doing those kind of transaction, that also add an economic disincentive for making those kind of transactions. So mempool policies at that argument also works. So because it's harder to broadcast those transactions, people are not making it for like sake of making it, because in ordinal cases they don't have like a proper market fit or anything, they are just making it because they can. And there are ordinal implementations which are especially designed in such a way that will bloat up the UTXO pool. So we are basically like, if you think about it, it's like trade-off between two decentralization. At one hand we are talking about mining decentralization, and the other hand we are talking about node decentralization. So if you have more data on the blockchain, the UTXO slate bloat up, less nodes on the market. If you have more restrictions on the blockchain, mining centralization happens, and then there are like more economic incentives for miners to have private mempool. So there is always like a disbalance between these two part, and we are trying to kind of fit between the right fit. What is the right fit at this point? That, like, I don't have a strong opinion. Like, I don't think like removing the filter helps or like deteriorates the network in any considerable way than it already is possible. um so yeah, that's my stand. Go back to status quo, like, get back to happy
Hmm.
coding and solve other important problems than removing stupid limits.
Okay.
Bhavik, batao. You have a lot to say. I can see.
Uh, yeah. So I think I don't know much about this more, but I think I would say the nodes decentralizations, right? Like nodes should be decentralized, and but see, Satoshi in white paper clearly said that the largest pool of CPU power should be controlled by the nodes, but he didn't envision the mining pools,
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah,
why we are like, that's why the network is facing this
yeah,
issue. So
yeah.
like stratum v2 and like ocean guys are doing, can they solve this problem or no? Like
Mm,
if miners become centralized, so like people can run
the thing
ocean.
about decentralization, it's kind of like it's a cat and mouse game. So that's why it's always hard. You never solve decentralization, you kind of like always resist centralization. That's something you can technically do, resist centralization, but you cannot say like, hey, here's a solution that makes everything decentralized, right? So we are constantly like battling the forces of centralization at best possible scenarios with the best possible designs. And yeah, stratum v2, these kind of like other kind of pools that are coming up, the braid pool, the ocean, the datum, all of these kind of like are part of the solution. There will not be one single solution which will hit the nail and get it done. It's gonna be a, as it happens in any trade-off system, you have trade-offs, you have multiple solutions that are handling each trade-offs. That's the way to handle it. So for me, like, both of the decentralization are pretty important. Like, if you don't have node decentralization, you don't have um
Network.
resistance against mining centralization. So mining can be like centralized by like, in some case, like, mining can be centralized anyway. The reason we have a decentralized network, because we have a decentralized node layer on top of the miners. Just because a miner is creating a block, that doesn't mean it will get propagated by the node layer. And that was BIP 148, right? The UASF, user activated soft fork, where the node layer forced the miner layer to break away from central agreement that they all came together and signed, right? So minings are central companies, and they can always collude among themselves, and they can always centralize. Even if you have like 100 different mining pools, they can all come together in one city, in one room together, and say like, hey, you know what, we are going to change the block pattern from this to this, and all of our mining pools going to agree. They can always do that. There is no way you can technically attack that problem. So that's why the node decentralization is important, because without that, the miners can basically collude and do whatever they want. It's only the node network that will reject their block, and then they will lose their block reward if they cannot like propagate the block across the network, right? So that's why like having that layer decentralized is very much important, and that's why I do strongly feel against UTXO bloating. Like I would like to like see some solutions where UTXO bloating, like one argument is like they will be priced out in the market because they are just gambling. But at the same time, the fact that I can write a small script and bloat the entire blockchain for the whole world, and with very low cost, and create like garbage data and put it into it, sounds like a problem to me. And like sounds like somebody has tried this has already been happened. The only way it stops is like the spammers, they run out of money. And there are also other kind of solutions. So when you look into the node network, what is the major problem of like having a big data? It's the IBD. It's like initial block download, and then the memory you need to load the whole UTXO set in. You can even like be like, there can be like plugins on top of your node that filters certain data from UTXO set, and then only loads the legit data into your memory, and you can like manipulate your filters in that way. You don't need to go and change that in Bitcoin Core. So the mempool policy and all these kind of things that can like is affecting the node performance, they can be solved at the extra software layer. You don't always have to go inside Bitcoin Core in order to do that. So there are other solutions where like one part of it is like kind of like decentralizing the Bitcoin Core software itself, such that the different modules can be used in different ways to package and create various kind of node implementation instead of having one kind of node implementation. So the project where this is happening is called the libbitcoin kernel, and the IPC project, where they are basically like taking the consensus logic out. So you can create any kind of app on top of that consensus logic. You don't have to write your own consensus logic anymore. So all of these solutions comes together. It's kind of like a global problem where the entire global nerdy heads are all together trying to solve it. There will not be one single solution. It's going to be a cat and mouse game. It's going to be a constant fight. But it's good that Bitcoiners are vigilant, and they're very aware about it, and they're looking what is happening inside Bitcoin code and asking this kind of question, having this conversation. Yeah, it does get ugly sometimes in Twitter, but that's just Twitter. Like in few years, you grow some skins and you'll be okay with it.
Yeah, that's a nice perspective. Thank you so much for that,
Yes.
because we wanted your take as well, because you've been around in the space for long in terms of actively contributing to core as well, right? Like you've got your PR merge as
No, like I did like minor contribution. I won't call myself a core developer, but I did like minor contributions back in the day
sure.
in code. Yeah.
No, but it does. I mean, you've scanned the whole code. You've understood the ins and outs of it, and you know how it works. So we wanted your understanding on your perspective on how it functions as well.
Sure.
Uh, Coming to almost towards the end, because I'm sure you also have things to attend to. Uh, what are your thoughts on the upcoming advancements? For instance, Lightning, Liquid, your Fedimint, your open protocols such as Nostr and
Yeah.
Arc. Which one's your favorite? What's your take on all of these?
All of
Like,
them. All of them.
of course, of course. What do you
All
think?
of them are like different approaches of solving the scalability problem of Bitcoin, which is like really important, because theoretically Bitcoin doesn't scale. This also goes back to one of the like early posts. We kind of like knew it from the very beginning. Anybody tells you blockchain scales, run away. Either they don't know what they're doing, or they're selling you something. So these are the solutions to scale this network as we are going through this financialization. We also need to like scale it up like with the freedom. So that's why like these technologies are important. So self custody, privacy, these things are important. If you have Bitcoin banks and that's the only way you can access Bitcoin, we kind of failed the experiment in that case. Like Bitcoin has to be by the freedom. You have to have self custody. You have to have ways where people can have like quick and settle payment. So and the road to scale is like not very easy, and that's why like all again like this is like another trade-off kind of problem where multiple solutions will come. So I'm pretty excited about everything. I barely can follow up in terms of technical details about all of them, but like so far it seems like all of them are various different approach to attack the scalability problem. We just need more ideas, and we need to go all guns blazing in all the possible paths and choose your own scalability app. If you find Arc interesting, use Arc. If you find Liquid, use Liquid. If you have some bridges, like there are some bridge projects happening between Lightning, Liquid, Bitcoin, and eCash, so that you can like very quickly bridge between various layers and make your payment wherever you need to make the payments while maintaining privacy. So amazing stuffs are happening. So that's why I'm here, and that's why like I'm excited for more and more Indian young developers to get into this development. So good way to get started, go to bitshala.org, look into what we are doing. At the top right corner you have career option, click on that, go to fellowship. That's where we have the paid internship program for you to get started into Bitcoin open source. So we have all these projects listed over there: Lightning, Arc, Cashew, eCash, and Fedimint and stuff. Choose your project, contribute over there, start your career, and we are here to support you.
Lovely.
Nice.
I mean, I wish more people knew about this, and probably through this video, both of us, Bhavik and I, will make equal efforts to push it out in the
Thank you so much.
relevant spaces. And any closing thoughts that you have to the young budding engineers, designers, management professionals, and any particular resources that they can, obviously apart from Bitshala, any other
Yeah,
free resources online which they need to focus
I
on?
mean, like resources are infinite. We go to Bitcoin. Like one of the good one I find is lob.net. Maybe you guys can add it in the comment section. Lob.net and nakamotoinstitute.org. These are like pretty comprehensive resource. It's not just about technicalities. There are like lot more going on over here. So have a holistic perspective around like what is going on in the world, what is money, what is economics, how market works, what is Bitcoin. This is going to help you. This is more than just a skill, this is more than just a job you do. So it's going to like change your whole life view if you dive deeper into this field. So yeah, choose your own domain and choose your own interest and figure out people, figure out materials on that domain, and keep studying up. And eventually if you had the right bulb in your head, and if it goes hit on, you will get addicted and you will find yourself doing something in this position, like all of us here, one way or other, right? So like keep chugging along, keep asking questions, find your tribe, find your community. There's a lot going on in India right now, so you can find a lot of WhatsApp groups, lot of Signal groups. In Bitshala, we have a Discord channel where we are having like more than 1,300 people over there. Almost kind of like every technical guy is there in Bitcoin, are there and interacting with us. So there are so many ways you can find your community. Reach out to other people, ask how you can help, ask how you can get involved, and that's it. Like eventually you will find your path.
Awesome. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time, Raj. Where can people reach you? Is there a particular resource?
You can reach me. The best way to reach me is like go to Bitshala Discord. Trust me, I'm not shilling because that's the only place I am active.
Sure.
Everywhere
Sure.
else I'm not.
Sure.
Go to Bitshala Discord and you will find me in the admin panel, and DM me over there
Awesome.
for anything that you want.
Right. Awesome. I'll
Yeah.
have you resources and details mentioned in the show notes.
Yeah.
Anything else, Bhavik? आप कुछ पूछना चाहोगे? बताना
या इट वाज रियली वेरी वंडरफुल डिस्कशन एंड इसमें तो हमने ऊपर ऊपर से ही बात किया बट लाइक वी विल आल्सो लव टू हैव यू फॉर मे बी फॉर द बिटकॉइन tech, like how Bitcoin core works, like from the technical, but how the mempool works, what are public key, private key cryptography,
Hmm.
and maybe because we have never done it, and
Yeah.
maybe we
It's
should do
kind of
it.
like also harder to do technicals because like it's harder to explain them in words. But definitely we can go towards something like
Yeah.
that. We have some people who are interested in creating some kind of like presentation and materials for basics, targeted for software developers, for the basic concepts and the basic understandings. Maybe we can use some of those materials and like figure out something
Yeah.
about around it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for
Thanks a lot.
having me. This was a
Thank
really
you so
nice
much.
conversation. And
Thanks a lot.
yep, I'll see you guys around.
Yeah,
Yes.
guys.
Hope to see you soon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.